Hare Krishna. Welcome back to our study of the Yoga Sutras. Let us continue our discussion with the understanding of the concept of Ishvara as Patanjali expounded in the previous sutra. So this is where we are after going through the understanding of what the Chittavritti Nirodha, the concept of involution that Patanjali spoke about earlier on in this book. How to attain that state of Samadhi. As an easy process, Patanjali introduced the concept of surrendering with a profound devotional understanding to Ishvara. And all of a sudden, Patanjali introduced a very theistic concept into the book, and we elaborated that in the previous sutra. So now, in the subsequent sutras, Patanjali is going to familiarize us with this concept of Ishvara, because there can be a lot of misconception about who or what this Ishvara is, what is the nature of this Ishvara. So by broadly talking about three aspects, how do I relate with this concept of Ishvara? And how do I realize that concept of Ishvara? And finally, what is the result of this Ishvara Pranidhana is something that Patanjali is going to talk about in the subsequent sutras. So in today's three sutras, 24, 25, and 26, we'll understand the science of Ishvara. Who or what is Ishvara according to Patanjali's understanding? So this is how he describes Ishvara. He says, Klesha karma vipaka ashayahi aparamrishta purusha vishesha Ishvaraha. Right? So what are these? Kleshas are basically worldly sufferings and afflictions, the cause of the sufferings. Karmas are our actions, right? The popular word karma. Vipaka is basically the results of those actions and the impressions that these actions create. So Ishvara is someone who is unaffected by any of these. So let's see the translation. Ishvara is that supreme person who is Purusha Vishesha. Vishesha means a special, a distinct kind of Purusha. So distinct from the individual Purusha, and is unafflicted by the worldly afflictions, actions, fruits of actions, and their impressions or their subliminal imprints. Right? So let us see the recitation of the sutra. Klesha karma vipaka ashayai aparamrishta purusha vishesha Ishvaraha. Right? It's again a very important sutra, especially this one term that Patanjali uses here, which is called as Purusha Visheshaha, because all the while he has been reserving the term Purusha for the individual soul. Now he is using a qualifier by using the term Vishesha, because an understanding, a question may come about, what exactly is Ishvara? Is Ishvara like Prakriti? Well, clearly no, because Ishvara is conscious, unlike Prakriti. So it has to be in the category of the conscious, tattvas, the conscious forms. But then is Ishvara like Purusha? Again, he's saying no, Ishvara is not exactly like Purusha, because it is a special Purusha. So what makes Ishvara so special and distinct from the ordinary Purushas? Because ordinary Purushas, they are afflicted by these four categories of things that Patanjali is talking about. So let us see what those four things are. First, he talks about kleshas. Kleshas are basically like, the causes of suffering in this world. Usually the word klesha is also used synonymous with suffering. But here, actually, the technical meaning of klesha is the worldly cause of that suffering. I mean, to give you an example, somebody who's heavily into social media, right? If they don't get enough likes to their post, they may feel sad. So now, the not getting likes in itself is not the cause of sadness. It is the entire social media itself in the broader context, which is the cause of sadness in that situation. So think of kleshas to be like the broader social media here, right? Which is the cause of sadness in that person. So it is actually the kleshas which manifest in the form of the various forms of worldly sufferings. Again, these kleshas are broadly divided into three kinds. There are something called as Adi Bhautika kleshas. Adi Bhautika kleshas means where the cause of the suffering is other living entities. Then there's something called as Adi Daivika kleshas, where the cause of this suffering is from supernatural sources like nature's calamities, intense heat, intense cold, something beyond our control. And there is something called as adhyatmika kleshas, where one ends up suffering because of their own mind and body and their own whatever internal causes. Right? So these are the three kinds of kleshas. And it is said that Ishvara does not get affected by any such kleshas, either by Ishvara's own internal problems or worldly problems, or even due to other living entities. Ishvara is never affected by these kleshas. That is why he always remains in that state of Satchit Ananda. Ananda means that supreme bliss, right? Then the next aspect, once these kleshas, they manifest, right? Then there is something called as karma. Now the word karma has become very popular, right? It's entered the English dictionary also, right? What exactly is karma? Karma, the word itself has multiple meanings. Karma at one level means action and reactions, right? Like what goes around comes back around, law of karma. We use that in that context. Here specifically, Patanjali is using the word karma in terms of not just any ordinary actions, but actions that are materially motivated, right? Like right now, if I want to eat food, right, there is some material motivation to fulfill my greed for some particular food stuff, to fulfill the greed to satiate my tongue and my belly. So there is some kind of a material motivation involved in it. It's not a pure, absolutely pure selfless act. So such activities which are materially motivated, or in other words, where there is some involvement of some false ego and ahankar, such activities are called as karma, right? And this is what, if you see, literally every action that we do in our life is motivated by something material, right? That is why everything is an act of karma, right? However, Ishvara also acts. It is not that Ishvara is lifeless, actionless, but rather Ishvara also acts, but yet he is not influenced by any karma. That is why to describe this, his state of not getting any reactions, or not being affected, or not being motivated by some material causes, many times in Upanishadic literature, it is described that the Ishvara never acts, right? But what does it mean? He does not act means that he does not act out of some material motivation, but rather his actions are out of some spiritual motivation, or they are not at all influenced by any worldly needs or worldly desires, right? Then once we act, the next point he talks about is vipaka. Now vipakas are basically the reactions that we get, so this is the this is a cycle of action that we go through, right? First we get some material motivation, and with that, once we act based on material motivation, we end up getting the reactions. Like in the previous example, I may overeat because of my karmic greed, and I will suffer from some physical ailment. That becomes the vipaka. So again, every worldly action that we do, we are constantly accumulating these vipakas, constantly accumulating these reactions. Again, unlike us, Ishvara is never accumulating any reactions, right? And that is why in Ishvara's context, his actions are no more called as karma, but they are called as Lilas. This is a very special term that is used in the Vedic terminology. Lilas are also actions, but actions that are not motivated by any material impetus. Such actions do not create any reactions. That is why when Ishvara acts, his Leelas do not affect him. He performs it as a pastime. A Leela can be the closest English word for it would be like a pastime. Basically, it is an action, a non-obligatory action. Unlike karma, which is an obligatory action. And once there's an obligatory action performed, you also get the reaction vipakas. And not only is your immediate reaction, but every action also stores an impression in your subconscious mind. And those are called as ashaya. Meaning that, every time I eat something and I enjoy that eating, then suddenly I create an impression that that particular kind of food stuff is my favorite. So next time when I'm hungry, that past impression of the past impression of joy will trigger a new desire that, look, now we should again eat that same food stuff, right? So this is how we get trapped in this cycle of karma. There is karma, then there is vipaka, then there's ashaya, and that whole impression, that whole collection of impressions that are stored in the subconscious mind, they create further desires, and again further actions begin because of material motivation, and again further reactions start, and we get trapped in this whole cycle. This is the cycle of karmic bondage that we get entangled in, right? This is the story of all the ordinary purushas, right? But the Ishvara is never afflicted by this. In fact, why he's referred to as a Vishesha Purusha, or a distinct kind of Purusha, is because Ishvara, though present in this body within us, is not affected by the body, unlike the ordinary Purushas, unlike the spirit soul, like you and me, right? In fact, the Bhagavad Gita very nicely explains that within this body, there is Purusha and there is the Param Purusha. There is the Atma and there is the Param Atma. And it is this Param Atma who, although residing in this body, never gets affected by these, by the worldliness, by anything to do with this matter and its materialism. Right? So this is the uniqueness about the Purusha. So it is very foolish to say that actually, look, when the Purusha descends, or when Ishvara descends in the form of an avatar, look, he is also engaging in worldly action. So his worldly actions are also subjected to our worldly morality and judgment, right? So that is a very incomplete argument, because our worldly actions are materially motivated, and therefore they follow the cycle of karma, vipaka, and ashaya. Whereas Ishvara, his very actions do not have any kind of material motivation. So we cannot use this same dynamics as ordinary actions onto Ishvara's actions. That is why Leelas cannot be judged based on karmic laws and karmic understanding, right? And then the next sutra, he clarifies further about the nature of Ishvara. He says, Tatra nirasatishayam sarvagya bijam. Tatra, that Ishvara which we are talking about, right? Niratishayam means, unsurpassed. Atishaya means, to cross something, and to surpass something. Niratishayam means that unsurpassed, which is literally matchless. Matchless in what? Sarvagya bijam. Sarvagya means that all-knowing potency, that omniscience. And he is the bija. Bija means the seed, the origin, the source of the omnipotence, right? So we'll translate it this way. Ishvara is the unsurpassed seed of omniscience, right? So let's see how the sutra is recited. Tatta niratishayam sarvagya bijam, right? So this Ishvara, why is he described as this sarvagya bijam? Because Patanjali is trying to again create a distinction between not only the Ishvara and ordinary Purushas, but also between Ishvara and the liberated Purushas. Because a yogi at a very, very advanced stage can also develop this quality of all-knowingness, of omniscience. Sometimes you might have heard stories about these mystic yogis, who in their meditative trance, if you ask them some questions, they will immediately go into meditative trance and they will tell you some, some unknown facts, right? So even an advanced yogi has that skills. But here, Patanjali is saying, even that potency of that yogi, of that advanced liberated yogi, is also coming from Ishvara, because he's the seed, he's the source of all this omniscience potency everywhere in this creation. Therefore, he's calling him as Sarvagya Bijam, right? So just because some liberated yogi is also all-knowing, the advanced yogi doesn't become Ishvara. Ishvara is the Bija, he's the source of this omniscience, right? Again, very clearly making a distinction between an advanced Purusha and Ishvara. And finally, he says that this Purusha, Saha Purvesham api Guru Kalena Anavachedat. That he, the Ishvara, is the Purvesham Guru, even the ancient gurus, the ancient teachers. He is the guru of even them, right? And he is unconditioned by Kala, unconditioned by time, right? So this is how the translation goes. Unconditioned by time, he, the Ishvara, is the teacher of even the most ancient teachers, right? So let's see the recitation of the sutra. Sapurvesham api guru kale nanvachedat. Right? So why is Patanjali now talking about this sutra? Actually, these three sutras are very similar to one verse that comes in the Bhagavad Gita, Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Aniyor Aniyamsha Anusmaritya, where Krishna is describing how an Ashtanga yogi, with what conception, with what kind of what concept, how to understand Ishvara, and how an Ashtanga yogi should meditate upon the Lord. And these are the characteristics of the Lord. In that context, he uses very similar concepts. He used the word kavi. Kavi means the same as what we used earlier, the omnipotence, the all-knowing aspect. Puranam, he's the ancient, he's the oldest of the oldest, right? So in response to this, not just in Bhagavad Gita, some Puranas also talk about how this Ishvara, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. So even the Adi Kavi here is referring to the original all-knower within this material world, who is the creator, Brahma himself. So even Tene Brahma Hridayadi Kavaye. So here, even in the heart of Brahma, this Ishvara is the one who revealed this Vedic wisdom. That is this nature of this Ishvara. Now, Patanjali is taking things to a totally different level. Not only is Ishvara different from Purusha, not only is Ishvara different from liberated Purushas, Ishvara is also very different from the great Devatas, the different cosmic controllers also. This Ishvara is an extremely special person, right? Because he is unconditioned by time. Even the Devatas get affected by time. Even the great yogis get affected by time, in some instances, right? But whereas he is the unconditioned by time, Kalina Anavachedat, and he is the original teacher of all teachers. So it is described that the knowledge, which is called Veda, it is transmitted into this material world by Brahma. Brahmaji actually gives this knowledge. And this Ishvara, he is a teacher of even the most ancient teachers. He is a teacher of even Brahma. So that is the speciality of this Ishvara, right? And it's very interesting to note that, we are talking about Brahma here. There's a nice Samhita called as a Brahma Samhita, right? And in that Brahma Samhita, Brahma actually presents his realizations when he was, bestowed upon this knowledge. When he was revealed, during the state of his internal meditation, after his tapasya, when this wisdom was revealed within his heart, he composed some prayers, and those prayers are called as Brahma Samhita. And in that, he describes that Ishvara Paramaha Krishnaha Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Right? Again, use the same term Ishvara there, glorifying Lord Krishna, Govinda, saying Ishvara Parama Krishnaha Sachidananda Vigraha. That you are the embodiment of the Satchid Ananda of eternality, bliss, and cognizance. And you are the Parama Ishvara. Again, the same terminology that Patanjali is using here. So interesting to see the parallels between other Vedic texts and Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, right? And he calls him, you are the Sarva Karana Karanam, you are the original cause of all causes, like that. So this is again, a more important sutras, these three sutras, where the concept of Ishvara is very nicely explained. How do I relate? As a practitioner, as a yogi, how should I relate with this Ishvara, right? So is Ishvara same as Purusha? No, very clearly, Patanjali is creating a distinction by calling him as a Vishesha Purusha, as distinct, as special from the ordinary Purushas. Then is Purusha affected by Prakriti? No, he's not affected by ordinary Purushas are affected by Prakriti. Even the great Mahayogis, even their so-called omniscience, their all-knowing potency, is also coming from this Ishvara. Therefore, Ishvara is distinct even from the advanced yogis. And finally, right, as we discussed here, that how Ishvara is also eternally liberated. So these are the three important themes that Patanjali is explaining how to relate with this concept of Ishvara. Right, and the next sutras, a couple of sutras, Patanjali is going to talk about how do I realize this Ishvara, because knowing Ishvara is one thing, as we saw in these sutras, but realizing Ishvara is a totally different level. Right, we don't want to just get stuck with theoretical knowledge. We want to experience that Ishvara. So how do I realize that Ishvara is a secret which Patanjali is going to reveal in the next 2 sutras. So let's discuss this in our next session. So thank you all very much for joining us today. Hare Krishna.